So I want you to picture this scene.
Okay.
You've got a 23-year-old woman. Her name is Ama, and she is standing entirely alone in this damp, echoing space of a converted water tower.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and in her hand, she's holding this small hexagonal key. And the text notes it's warm because she's been keeping it in her breast pocket, like right next to her heart.
Right, which is such a specific, intimate detail.
Exactly. So she reaches up behind her own neck, feels for a specific indentation, inserts this key into a titanium bolt, and she just turns it.
And there's that sound, right?
Yes. There is this heavy mechanical click that the source material actually describes as sounding like the first word of a language being forgotten.
Yeah, it is such a vivid description.
It really is.
Mhm.
Because she is calmly, just methodically unscrewing her own synthetic shoulder. She's detaching her arm so she can literally just give it away to a total stranger.
It's an incredibly visceral, almost jarring image to open with. I mean, she's actively releasing a completely functional part of her own body into this communal pool of hardware.
It's wild. And the reason we are starting today's deep dive with someone literally dismantling themselves is because of this fascinating stack of research you brought us.
Yeah, the text called Synthetic SANGHA.
Right. So for those of you listening who might not be familiar, we are diving into a community living in Lagos-2, which is this massive, sprawling, floating city built on top of reclaimed oil infrastructure out in the Atlantic Ocean.
It's a really unique setting.
It is. It's this place where the ground beneath your feet breathes with the tides, and survival technologies are deliberately left unpatented so anyone can use them.
Yeah, the whole idea of open source survival.
Exactly. And true beauty there is found in this exact act of giving up a piece of yourself. They actually call it a calibrated offering.
Which really brings us to the absolute core of our mission for this deep dive.
Mhm.
Because the Synthetic SANGHA, they aren't just a group of people sharing, unpatented tech.
Right.
They're a society that constantly swaps synthetic body parts. And they intentionally undergo these intense procedures to wipe, migrate, or totally alter their own memories.
Which is just, it's hard to even wrap your head around.
It is. They have completely and systematically dismantled the entire idea of a fixed permanent self.
And that is the profound, almost impossible question we're going to try to answer for you today. Like, how do you build a functioning community? Or how do you make a promise to someone?
Or even fall in love.
Yes. How do you love someone when nobody is the exact same person tomorrow that they are today?
It's the ultimate philosophical stress test. I mean, to even begin to understand how they survive it, we have to look at the daily reality of their philosophy.
Okay, lay it out for us.
So the Sangha operates on this baseline assumption that identity is completely fluid. When members pass each other on these rusted floating walkways, they don't assume any continuity.
So they don't say, like, hey, how are you?
No, the standard greeting is actually, which you am I talking to today?
I cannot imagine asking my partner or my best friend that question over coffee every morning.
It would be exhausting, right?
Super exhausting. But for Ama, our 23-year-old who is currently, unscrewing her arm, this philosophy is the entire reason she traveled to Lagos-2 in the first place.
Yeah, her arrival is a huge part of the text.
Right. When she first arrives at the Sangha, she has this condition the text refers to as doubled vision.
From a severe accident she had years prior.
Exactly. And as a result of that accident, she has one biological eye and one synthetic eye. And the critical detail here is that the two feeds do not align in her brain.
They process the physical world in two overlapping, completely conflicting registers.
Yeah, it sounds like a nightmare.
It's a lot. Her biological eye sees the world in this warm, continuous, sort of organic blur. But her synthetic eye is simultaneously feeding her sharp, aggressive, granular data.
Like micro-movements and temperature gradients.
Right, and structural stress points. So her visual cortex is just permanently arguing with itself. It causes massive, debilitating neurological headaches.
Which makes total sense. So she comes to the Sangha with a referral letter, fully believing she needs to find a doctor to fix her.
But the Sangha basically looks at her and says, why would you fix that?
Which blew my mind when I read it. They teach her that this visual paradox she's living with isn't a defect at all. It's a profound skill.
A feature, not a bug.
Exactly. She's being forced to learn how to hold two completely incompatible truths at once without forcing her brain into a resolution.
Which is so difficult for the human brain to do.
It is. It instantly reminded me of the modern cognitive dissonance of code switching.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Right, like when you have to hold two wildly different cultural or political viewpoints in your head at the exact same time, just depending on what room you happen to be standing in.
Yeah, you aren't resolving the contradiction, you're just holding it.
Exactly. You're just existing in the friction.
And the Sangha believes that the human impulse to force a resolution is actually the root of most suffering. Their entire social fabric is built on holding contradictions rather than solving them.
But I mean, living with that level of fluidity has to come with immense, like, society-breaking risks.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I was really struggling with this part of the reading. If you can just constantly change your identity and swap out your physical parts and literally undergo a neurological procedure to just wipe your memory of an event,
Yeah.
isn't that just a massive get-out-of-jail-free card?
It definitely sounds like one.
Right. If someone in this floating city commits a terrible crime, or, I don't know, even just borrows a bunch of money and then they migrate their identity, how do you hold them accountable?
They could just say, that wasn't me.
Exactly. That was my past configuration. It honestly sounds like a recipe for absolute chaos.
Well, the text reveals that this isn't just some hypothetical flaw you've discovered. It is the exact crisis that nearly destroyed their entire community.
Really?
Yeah. The Sangha endured a period they chillingly refer to as the hard year.
The hard year, okay.
Right. People were arriving at Lagos-2 expecting this total consequence-free liberation. And the founders quickly realized that liberation without structure is just entropy.
Just total collapse.
Exactly. During the hard year, people were abandoning their partners without a word. They were dodging communal debts. And worse, refusing to help maintain the floating infrastructure.
All under the guise of fluid identity, I bet.
Exactly. And because of that, the city literally started sinking.
Wait, literally sinking?
Yes, because the buoyancy pumps weren't being maintained. People were just changing who they were and walking away from their jobs.
Wow. Okay, so how did they pull themselves out of that? Because if you can't rely on someone's identity to keep them accountable, what else is there?
They had to realize a brutal truth. If the self is fluid, ethics cannot be based on identity. Ethics must be based on commitments.
Okay, that is a huge distinction. And to really visualize how this works, the text introduces us to this guy named Kofi.
Yes, Kofi's a great example.
So Kofi lives in this modified shipping container, and taking up the entire back wall of his home is this massive physical map made out of scavenged cardstock and color-coded thread.
It is a literal, tangible architecture of holding.
Yeah, like his own personal care map. Every piece of cardstock has a name on it, and every thread pinned between those cards represents a specific active commitment.
And the colors mean different things.
Right. He uses red threads for primary bonds, like people he is deeply personally responsible for.
Blue threads are for witnessing.
Witnessing, yes. Explain that real quick.
So witnessing is for people whose identity changes. He has explicitly agreed to formally observe and validate. It's a huge deal in their culture.
Got it. And then the green threads dictate maintenance obligations for the city's infrastructure.
Exactly.
It's so brilliant because it functions almost exactly like a motherboard in a computer, or even like a city's electrical grid.
That's a really good way to look at it.
Because the data, the people flowing through the system, they're constantly changing and mutating and moving around. But the infrastructure, the threads themselves, is what keeps the system from completely collapsing.
Right. And the beating heart of that grid is a gathering they call the maintenance assembly.
Tell us about the assembly.
So this is a weekly, non-optional meeting for everyone in the Sangha. And the text goes out of its way to emphasize that they do not treat this as a chore.
It's not just some boring administrative town hall.
Not at all. For these people, the assembly is actually their truest form of prayer.
Because their version of spirituality is taking other people's material reality seriously.
Exactly.
The assembly is where they figure out, like, whose water filter's rusted out, or who needs extra caloric intake this week, or who is struggling with a recent memory migration.
It's pure communal upkeep.
But looking at Kofi's string map, I do have a question. What happens when a thread snaps?
What do you mean?
Well, what if someone undergoes a massive memory migration and they come back completely forgetting a 10-year commitment they made to you? Like that motherboard analogy breaks down if the components just decide to sever the connections.
That is the tragic reality of their system. And the text actually answers this through Kofi's own personal heartbreak.
Oh, right, the story with his witness.
Yeah. Kofi had a witness, a person who sat with him through his earliest, most terrifying identity procedures. They shared a profound bond, mapped out in thick blue thread on his container wall.
A primary connection.
But this witness eventually underwent a radical memory migration, and when they returned, their neurological architecture was entirely rewritten.
So they didn't remember him at all.
No. They looked at Kofi with the polite, blank cordiality of a total stranger. They had zero recollection of who he was or what they had been through together.
Man, that is devastating. To have someone who knows your absolute deepest fears just look right through you like you're nobody.
It's a unique kind of grief.
So what did Kofi actually do with the blue thread on his wall? Did he just cut it down and throw it away?
He didn't remove it, but he didn't leave it as an active connection either.
What did he do?
He tied a thick knot right in the middle of the thread.
A knot?
Yeah. In his personal mapping system, the knot signifies that the connection is acknowledged, but it's no longer active. It's the Sangha's way of saying, this bond existed and the breaking of it must be visible.
The grief of that loss actually has to be witnessed.
Exactly. You don't just erase the board and pretend the past didn't happen. You make the loss a structural part of the architecture itself.
I really love that. It makes me think of a physical scar on the human body.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the skin in that specific spot is actually thicker and stronger where it broke, but the function of it, its ability to feel light touch or sweat, has permanently changed. You carry the physical evidence of the break.
That's a really beautiful parallel.
Thanks. But, so we're talking about the emotional residue left behind when the mind changes. But if we pull on the thread of your sources here, we have to talk about what happens when the body changes.
Right, because it's not just minds being wiped.
Exactly, because when you share synthetic components in Lagos-2, you don't just inherit hardware, you inherit ghosts.
We transition here from the architecture of the mind to the physical residue stored in the body itself. And the mechanics of this are just fascinating.
Kofi's arm is the perfect example of this, I think.
It really is.
So Kofi's current synthetic left arm used to belong to a fisherman named Abara. And Abara tragically died when one of the outer oil platforms collapsed into the sea.
Right.
Now, Kofi doesn't fish. He's an electrician and a caretaker. But whenever Kofi stands near the edge of the water, his left arm instinctively reaches out.
It moves on its own.
Yeah, his fingers curl, his wrist tilts, and his shoulder dips as if he is throwing a heavy-weighted fishing net into the waves. They actually call it the Abara reflex.
And he's not the only one dealing with this.
Right, there's Ibrahim.
Yeah, there's another character, this guy named Ibrahim, who attends one of their communal story meals. Ibrahim has synthetic hands that belong to his dead father, who was a master carpenter.
And Ibrahim is also an electrician, right?
He is. But when he runs his hands over a piece of wood, those fingers expertly know how to read the grain. They remember the carpentry.
The underlying mechanism the Sangha is dealing with here is proprioceptive memory, isn't it?
Exactly. The synthetic musculature, the microservos, and the artificial nervous system, they actually retain the tension patterns and the repetitive habits from their previous users.
So the hardware physically remembers what it was used for?
Yes.
Okay, I understand the concept of like a tennis player developing muscle memory in their own arm, but inheriting someone else's muscle memory.
It's unsettling for outsiders.
Unsettling is an understatement. I have to admit, that sounds absolutely terrifying. It borders on a complete loss of bodily autonomy.
I can see why you'd feel that way.
Like, are you just walking around as a haunted house for someone else's nervous system? Every time you twitch, it's a dead guy moving your arm?
Well, it would feel like a haunting if you were desperately clinging to the idea of an isolated autonomous self.
Okay, fair.
But the Sangha reframes this completely. To them, the body holds responsibility. It isn't a ghost possessing you. It's a lineage you are participating in.
A lineage?
Right. You are in an active, conscious relationship with everything you carry. Kofi doesn't suppress the Abara reflex. He doesn't fight it. And he doesn't go to a clinic to have the arm's firmware wiped.
He just lets it happen.
Yeah, when he stands by the water, he actively lets the arm reach. He treats that physical twitch as a form of witnessing a life that ended abruptly.
Wow.
He is carrying a dead fisherman's grief and practice as an act of profound respect.
That reframing really shifts it from being like a horror story into something incredibly beautiful. The physical body itself becomes a witness.
Exactly.
But that actually leads us to a really dark place in the text.
Meaning with Emeka.
Yeah. Because if the body can remember things, the mind never even experienced what happens when the mind suddenly loses the things it did experience.
Right. We have to look at the character of Emeka. Emeka is a construction worker from the mainland. And it's important to note he is completely outside the Sangha.
He doesn't subscribe to their philosophy at all.
Not even a little. But he suffered a catastrophic malfunction with his neural interface. And the mainland clinic that tried to repair it accidentally demolished random rooms of his memory.
And these aren't just misplaced files, right? The neurological pathways are permanently deleted.
Gone forever.
The way he described it in the text is just haunting. He says it's like living in a house where you've known the flow plan your entire life, but suddenly you open your bedroom door and there's just empty air.
A total void.
So he comes to Lagos-2 out of sheer desperation. And the Sangha responds to his panic with a practice called the witness circle.
Yes.
Can you explain how this actually works? Because this part was intense.
It is one of their most intense and demanding practices. Several members of the Sangha sit in a physical circle with a person experiencing the cognitive loss.
Okay.
In Emeka's case, he is absolutely terrified of losing one specific surviving memory. It's a moment of his 3-year-old daughter smiling in a sunlit kitchen. So, through deep integration technology, which involves physically linking their neural interfaces, Emeka transmits a highly annotated, sensory-rich record of this memory to the circle.
So Ama and the others are literally downloading his memory.
It's way more than downloading. They feel the warmth of that specific sunbeam. They feel the phantom weight of the toddler in their own nervous systems.
That is heavy.
It is. They don't experience it as their own lived history, but they hold the exact sensory data of it.
It's like a human cloud backup.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
Like an external hard drive made out of other people's empathy. But I do have to ask critically here.
Go for it.
Why doesn't the Sangha just try to fix Emeka's brain? I mean, they clearly have the technology to unscrew arms, build synthetic eyes, and link nervous systems together.
Right.
Why just sit in a circle and absorb a memory? Isn't that an incredibly passive response to someone suffering from a severe brain injury?
Well, the text highlights the Sangha's radical, almost militant stance on the concept of healing.
Militant how?
They actively refuse to even use the word. To the Sangha, healing implies returning to a previous state of wholeness that simply does not exist anymore.
Because the past is gone.
Right. You cannot undemolish those neurological rooms in Emeka's mind. The past configuration is just gone.
So the loss is a permanent architectural change.
Precisely.
Hmm.
So they don't try to fix the gap. They provide companionship inside the gap.
Wow.
By neurologically holding the memory of his daughter, they ensure the undeniable fact of her smile survives, even if Emeka himself eventually wakes up one day and loses the ability to access it.
They're holding it for him.
Yes, they are validating that his past was real without giving him the false hope that they can magically restore it to what it was.
That requires such a massive perspective shift. I mean, for Ama or Kofi or Emeka, it takes years of painful unlearning to accept these gaps and stop trying to, fix themselves.
It's a total rewiring of how you view trauma.
Right. Which naturally makes me wonder about the next generation. Like, what does it look like when a human being is actually born into this philosophy?
That is a fascinating part of the text.
If you never learn the concept of a permanent identity in the first place, do you still suffer when it changes?
This was actually a point of massive debate within the community itself. External developmental psychologists from the mainland argued that children fundamentally need a secure base.
Sure, attachment theory.
Exactly. They argued kids need a fixed identity and stable figures to feel safe and develop properly. But a woman named Adaze, who actually grew up inside the Sangha, argued the exact opposite.
What'd you say?
She stated that telling a child who you are today is not all you are is a promise of limitless potential, not a threat of instability.
Which perfectly introduces us to Sunday.
Yes, Sunday is the perfect case study.
He's this kid born in the Sangha, 14 years old, with one biological eye and one synthetic silver eye. And the story goes that when he was just 7 years old, he stood up on a supply crate at the weekly assembly in front of everyone.
Just a little kid addressing the whole city.
Right. And he announced he was choosing his own name. He chose Sunday because, as he confidently told this massive crowd of adults, Sunday comes back, but it's never the same Sunday.
A 7-year-old grasping the concept of cyclical but altered time.
It's staggering. I try to wrap my head around his development using an analogy.
Okay, let's hear it.
It's the difference between learning to stand on a solid concrete floor versus learning to surf.
Oh, I like that.
If you're born on the water, the shifting, unstable ground is your stability. You just learn to balance in the motion.
Right, the wave is the baseline.
Exactly. But I keep questioning the reality of this. Are these kids actually enlightened philosophers, or have they just been forced to adapt to a deeply unstable, traumatic environment?
It's a valid concern.
Like, can a 14-year-old truly grasp the heavy emotional weight of having a completely fluid identity?
Well, the text suggests that Sunday possesses what he calls the long view. Think about how adults typically process change.
We usually hate it.
Right. Adults experience change as a dramatic, painful loss, specifically because they are constantly comparing their present state to their past state.
We mourn the energy we used to have, or the person we used to be.
Exactly. But Sunday doesn't run that comparison.
Yeah,
He doesn't grieve who he was last year any more than he grieves yesterday afternoon.
because there's no fixed point to grieve.
It is a fundamental rewiring of human attachment. He doesn't need a secure base to be fixed to, because he never believed he was a static object in the first place.
It's just wild to think about. So, synthesizing all of this incredible material you sent us for today.
Yeah, bringing it all together.
What the Sangha is ultimately teaching is that the illusion of a permanent self is just that. It's an illusion.
A comforting fiction.
Exactly. Whether you're swapping titanium shoulders in a floating city or just naturally aging and changing your mind in the real world, you are not who you were 10 years ago.
None of us are.
So what actually holds us together, what keeps society from sinking into the ocean, aren't our static identities. It's our daily practices.
The threads.
Right. It's the literal and metaphorical threads of commitment we tie to others. It's our willingness to be witnessed in our changes and to generously witness others in theirs.
It really boils down to taking active responsibility for what you carry, whether that's the physical reflex of a dead fisherman or the downloaded memory of a stranger's child.
Or simply a promise you made yesterday.
Exactly. You hold it and you maintain it.
I want to leave you, our listener, with a direct challenge today to think about.
Based on Ezra's advice.
Yes, based on a really poignant piece of advice a character named Ezra gives to Ama late in the text. Ama is going through her discernment phase.
Which is when she decides what parts of herself she wants to keep.
Right. She's asked what single thread she wants to remain continuous across all her future identity changes. And she says she wants to keep her curiosity. She wants to always be looking.
Which sounds like a good thing.
It does. But Ezra gives her this stark warning. He tells her that sometimes the thread you cling to the tightest is actually your wound.
Such a powerful line.
He warns her that always looking can be a very convenient excuse for never arriving and never actually committing to anyone.
It's a profound realization. The very thing you think is your greatest strength might just be the mechanism keeping you safely distant from others.
So I want you to look at the thread you define yourself by. Think about the core trait you genuinely believe makes you you.
Is it really serving you?
Right. Is that thread acting as your anchor in the storm? Or is it secretly acting as your cage? What might happen if you took a small hexagonal key, reached up, loosened the screws, and just let it go?